You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into Mizzou, That's Who, your podcast for Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network. I am Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. Listen, we've got a lot to talk about. Glad you joined us today. Glad you joined us this week. Lots going on in Missouri Athletics. And you've got Mizzou hoops splitting a weekend set with Arkansas and Vanderbilt. You've got football hiring Fresno State's Kirby Moore as their offensive coordinator. Rejoice out there, Missouri fans. I know that you wanted it. I know you wanted an offensive coordinator. It happened. Kirby Moore coming to Columbia. Football gets 2 D1 transfers, one from the MAC, one from the SEC in Florida. They get an offensive lineman and a D-back. They also lost one to the transfer portal, a guy who said he was going to return, but he's not going to return to Missouri. He's going to return to school, but not to go to school at Missouri. And Missouri Wrestling, they got a victory. Number 10 Wrestling got a victory over number 13 UNI. And we were talking Missouri Gymnastics, off to a hot start this year too. So there's a lot going on in Missouri Athletics. Here to break it down with me, Gabe DeArmond, Maggie Johnson. As I said, Gabe, how are you doing? How has this week been for you?
I'm good. It's been busy like every other week. There is no off season. I think The best news of the week, and we can talk about this when we get to football, is that Greg Sankey wants the early signing period to go away. I think that's phenomenal. But I think basketball is the kind of on everybody's mind right now. They went 1-1. They moved up in the coaches poll. They're 20th in both polls today. So that's good news going into, I think, a 4-game stretch that determines what this season is going to be.
That's a very professional tease there from Gabe. Maggie, how are you? How is your week? We got the national championship game coming up when we're recording this podcast. Exciting time around just everywhere.
Yeah, I'm excited for the game tonight. I already have a plan. After we get off here, going to go pick up some wings, get everything kind of set up for it. But no, I think the week was pretty productive in my opinion. Going 1-1, not the best, but it's what we expected. It's what we kind of said we would be happy with. So I think I even read on Power Mizzou, Gabe, you said if we go 1-1 the rest of the year, we'll make the tournament.
Yep.
It's not that big of a deal. The bigger thing to me is that we blew a big lead, and that kind of is a little bit reminiscent of past Mizzou teams, but there was only so much you could do in that game with the team that you played in the second half that shot so well. So I'm not disappointed. Like, I left after I finished watching that game. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of a bummer, but it still ended up with the outcome that we expected. So It's really not that big of a deal. But there are a few issues that we probably need to talk about when it comes to basketball.
They cover.
They did cover. Great teams cover. So
exactly.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, they do indeed. And before we dive into basketball, I got to thank Charlie Hustle. I'm wearing the Joe's Kansas City Barbecue shirt today. One of my favorite shirts. We've all got different cuts on. Yeah, we got Chiefs going on. We've got all Charlie Hustle. Make sure to go check them out, charliehustle.com. Is that a Zambezi Zinger shirt?
Zambezi Zinger. Yep. I think it's like reopening this year.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's no disrespect, but it's not like the original one that I rode when I had a World of Fun season pass, when I was 11 years old. There's somebody, I think the Kansas City Star did a story on that one a few years ago, and it's like in some random place, maybe in South America or something, but
I'm just picturing Gabe like on the Zambezi Zinger with turkey leg in one hand.
No, turkey legs, the Renaissance Festival.
No, they had turkey legs at World of Fun. I promise you, they had giant turkey legs.
No, I was more the I'm gonna eat and drink everything I want before I go to World of Fun, because like I'm not gonna pay $14 for a little box of Reese's Pieces or something.
Even at 11, Gabe.
Frugal man.
Smarter than most.
I was raised cheap.
Starts early. Well, let's talk about this Missouri game against Arkansas. Let's start there, because I was talking to you guys when we started. It's not unexpected for them to lose this game, I don't think. Arkansas ranked 13, Missouri ranked 20. If we just go straight by the poll numbers, they were supposed to lose this game. They did get out to a 34-27 halftime lead, a game that I told you guys that I kind of turned on around the midway point and watched to the end. I didn't catch the first half of the first half, if that makes sense. But again, they scored 34 points in the second half. And they did what they did, but they just didn't play as good a defense. 47 points for Arkansas in that second half to get them to rally past Missouri. And Maggie, you mentioned it, kind of blowing that lead, I think, is the biggest thing that hurts from that game. Because, if Arkansas was if that game was close all the way through and Arkansas comes in and they just score, they score some points at the end, they go on a run and they win that game, you feel a little bit better about it. But the way that the game kind of transpired, I think, is the way that it stings a little bit more than most losses would.
I think we let a guy who has scored 12 points all season kind of come out and just make us look silly a little bit. I mean, we gave up a lot of open shots, which, we talked about is not completely outside of the norm this year. The open shots is kind of like a complicated thing because usually teams don't make every open shot you watch players in pre-games, they don't make every shot that they take. But man, it sure felt like Arkansas made every shot in that second half. I mean, every single one just stung a little bit more than the next.
Yeah, and they're not really that good a shooting team, especially from 3-point range. I think they were shooting like 29 or 30% from.
They shot 12.5. They shot 12.5% against Auburn and they lost to them a couple of days ago. 12.5%.
But then like Ricky Council is not a good 3-point shooter, but he made a couple, and then it seemed like every possession was just Ricky Council takes a couple dribbles and okay, so you're going to let me shoot from 17 feet? Okay, I'm going to do it. And midway through that second half, he was not a 29% shooter. He was a guy that the basket looked 3 times as big as it normally is because he just was in that rhythm. And Debo Davis hit a few. And so, Arkansas is a good team. They played well. It's a tough place to play. I talked to a couple of people that were there who said they've been to quite a few games at Bud Walton, and that's about as loud as they've ever heard it. It was just the way it happened. I mean, we look at it and say, well, no team should ever blow a 17-point lead, right? Well, if you're good enough to be ahead by 17 after 12 minutes, why is the other team not good enough to outscore you by 17 over the last 28 minutes, right? Because that was not a situation where they were up 17 because they were just – it wasn't SEMO, right? It was they were up 17 because they played well and Arkansas played poorly, and then that flipped. I think what that game showed is Missouri can't survive a night where both Demoy Hodge and Kobe Brown are off. They can survive one of them being off, but I don't think they can survive both of them being off against a good team.
There's a common theme.
Foul trouble. We can't survive with them on the bench.
I was about to go into there because there's a common theme really in both games. So it's okay. In both games, Kobe Brown found himself in foul trouble. And that's something that, game to game changes and I don't think Kobe's a guy that's going to foul a whole lot. And I don't think that's something you have to worry about.
He did last year.
But
he's not Jeremiah Tillman. I mean,
he's right. But he's a guy that he fouls more than you'd like because he's a 6'7" guy having to guard 6'10" guys.
That's true. Yeah.
And now the zone protects him to some degree. But I thought in both those games, and I know fans said, well, one of those calls in both games was awful. And that may be. Look, I don't know. I didn't watch the replay. But the bottom line is at least one of them was a good call. And when you get one, you just have to play different. You can't put the refs in. You can't allow them to maybe be able to call the second one. And if Kobe's getting a foul because he's trying to block a shot or because his guy caught the ball, 6 feet from the rim, okay, you can live with those. You can't live with the cheap fouls. Don't reach in. Don't foul a guy 14 feet from the basket. You only get 5. Now, I'll say the one thing I liked is that Dennis Gates let him play with it a little bit at Vandy. I mean, I used to get so frustrated. It was like an automatic ticket to the bench until the second half when you got 2 fouls with Konzo Martin. Didn't matter how many guys he had on his bench. Didn't matter what. You had 2 fouls, you were sitting. And that, I liked that Gates did it at Arkansas because, hey, you're up 17. Why would you put Kobe in and risk it,
Right.
But then at Vandy, they were down. They weren't playing well. He left Kobe in for a little bit, and then he pulled him. But he's shown a little more flexibility on that.
Yeah.
And Kobe's fouls are foul. I mean, a lot of them are fouls. Like, he's leaving the ground. He's over. It's like a lot of people are, even Kobe, every single time he's like, what? And I'm like, you're not straight up. You left the ground. I mean, they're pretty obvious. They're pretty obvious fouls. But like you said, what do you do when you're undersized? You're the only player of your size, and you're taking on these 6'2", 7 foot. I think Vandy had a guy that is 7 feet. I mean, you're taking on these massive humans. I mean, it's almost like, what do you do if you don't have somebody come in for backup on those?
Well, and that's where you'd like to see Mohamed Diarra be able to get on the floor. And I mean, if you're 6'10" and you can't play on this team at all, I don't think that's a great sign. Like, I'm not trying to insult the kid, but
right.
Even, Jordan Wilmore at times was like, I don't know, man, just go hit somebody 3 times. It's just take up some minutes. And there are times you would like to see Diarra used that way. Just, hey, they've got a 7-footer in there. Now, Liam Robbins isn't a traditional 7-footer. He's a little more of a shooter and plays outside, but, he's not Oscar or anything. But, like, if Kobe picks up an early foul in the next game, I would not hate seeing Mohamed Diarra just, hey, man, go eat up 4 minutes. And if you foul 3 times, we don't care. Mm-hmm. Like, it's cool. You don't have to play the second half anyway. We just need to make sure Kobe can play the second half.
Yeah, I do like that I do wish we'd see him a little bit more, but then we've seen Dennis use the personnel that he has, I think, in a very effective way. To your point, Gabe, the way that he manages the fouls has been really I enjoy it. I enjoy how he does that. I know Jarrett Sutton talking to him just kind of about his demeanor on the sideline, on the bench, of just like everything like that. CY, this is one of my favorite stories that Jarrett was telling me, because he was at the Kentucky game, and he said CY never sits in the same seat. He is always moving around the bench, getting guys up around and talking to him, and making sure that they're staying engaged in the game. And I think that's kind of a big way talking about that staff. I don't know why I just thought about that story that he was telling me, but no, I think when you look at the field goal percentage, 61.5% during shooting in the second half, it's hard to beat a team. Like, he didn't shoot 80%, but like when you make more than you miss, that's good. That's some groundbreaking analysis you're getting here firsthand on the Mizzou That's Who podcast. If you're making more than you miss, you're having a good day. That's in any sport. That's in anything. So it's tough. We did talk about the open shots and everything like that. And I can see kind of how this game could lead to a little bit of a flat Vanderbilt performance, right? It kind of, after that game, I was a little worried. I was like, Vanderbilt game's looking a little bit dicey now with how this game ended.
Especially at 11 a.m. Like,
yeah.
Look, by 11 a.m., I mean, I've been up for 5 hours, so it's no big deal for me. But for a 20-year-old to have to get to the arena at 9:30, they're not used to that. And it is a little bit different. I thought Missouri didn't play well coming out of the gates, but there was never a point in the first half where you felt like this is dangerous, right? I mean, because I think that whole game, I don't think either team ever had bigger than a 9-point lead in that game. I mean, that was all played. The entire game, I'm pretty sure, was played within single digits. So you always kind of felt like, hey, if they can put together a run, they're going to be okay. They did. They got up 9, and then credit Vandy. They put together a run and made it more interesting than I thought it was going to be, and that wasn't really iced until Shawnee's free throws with 4 seconds left.
Right, and then it was actually a 6-point game. I mean, the guy at the end at the buzzer made a wild 3-point shot, which was a great shot. So credit to him to bring it within 3. But it was, and I think the big guy made like a bank 3, I think, within a couple of minutes left in the game too. So, I mean, they were also shooting really well. It was a great game. It was a game that you have to win, and a game we did win. So really good. You can't ask for more.
0-2 probably would have been, I don't want to say catastrophic. That seems a bit dramatic, but it wouldn't have been great for this team, especially after what,
because that was one of the 2 games we said you can't lose that game. You can't lose to Vandy at home. And Vandy, seeing them in person, they look better than what their record says they are so far this year. I mean, they have a few guys that can play. And if you talk to basketball people, and Dennis Gates said it afterwards, he said Stackhouse runs some really good stuff on offense and all that. But that's a game you can't lose, and there's one more of those. At some point, South Carolina comes here. I think that's easily the worst team in the SEC. You can't lose that one. Any other game on the schedule, there's no, oh my God, this is season-changing loss left.
We are going to struggle whenever we play any team that has bigs like that. I mean, we got lucky because we played very well against Kentucky, and, we played very good defense against Oscar, although he still scored a lot of points and got a lot of rebounds. But it was teams like Illinois. We played so well against Illinois because we matched up really well against them in terms of size. They really don't have anybody that was able to dominate us on the inside. I think we might struggle with Florida, who has, I can't think of his last name. Castleton, who's a very good, inside player. We're going to struggle with those teams. So, yep.
And it's not just that they have the big guy. It's that big guy demands so much attention that he's got 2 or 3 guys going to him, which means there's a free rebounder or two. And I think it's 86-47 on the glass in the last 2 games.
Oh, I wrote it down.
Something like that.
We were out rebounded 40-23 at Arkansas, so 17-point advantage. 46-27 against Vanderbilt.
Okay, so 86-50 in 2 games. But I liked what Dennis Gates said after the game, because it's exactly what I've said about this team all year. So anytime he says what I say, good point, Dennis. Well put. Yep. But he said, look, it's easy to look at it and say we got out rebounded. And he didn't say it exactly this way. It's going to happen to this team. You have to live with it. You know it now. You don't want it to be 47-20 or whatever you said it was. But it's going to happen. So you have to minimize that a little bit, but not compound it with losing the turnover battle, having a negative assist to turnover battle, losing block shots, whatever. He said, we can survive that if it's our only negative category. And they can. I mean, they got out rebounded 40-23, and they had every chance to win that Arkansas game. That Arkansas game was not lost because of second chance points or rebounds. It was lost because they had 3 awful possessions in the final 2 minutes that ended up with 1 total point. The Vandy game, they won even though they were out rebounded by 19. So look, Missouri's not going to have a positive rebounding margin very often in SEC play, maybe not at all. But they just have to make sure they do have a positive turnover margin and a positive assist ratio and things like that.
Basketball is a game of runs too, and I think that's kind of a big thing. I believe Arkansas went on a 9-0 run, and they weathered that storm fairly well. That put them up 2 or 3 points. And then I believe Vanderbilt went on like a 13-1 run at one point in this game too. So just seeing how they weather the runs, I think for me has been something that I don't want to say focused on, but something I've made a conscious effort to say, okay, this team's on a run. How do they do that? How Dennis does timeouts and everything like that still, I think is good. And they've been able to weather a lot of these. Especially when you talk about the Vanderbilt 13-1 is a tough one. Like that's a tough one to try to get through. And I believe they were up double digits at that point. That gave Vanderbilt the lead. The 13-1 did, but yeah, this team being able to battle through that. Kobe Brown, I believe, had 18 against Vanderbilt.
Him and Golston. And that's the difference between these 2 games too. The leading scorer of the Arkansas game was Sean East with 13 points. In Vandy, we had 2 guys get 18. Demoy Hodge had 17, and Noah Carter had 16.
Yeah. Yep. Missouri's just not going to win many games that score 68 points.
Yeah,
right.
It's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
And it's encouraging, I think, that, again, I think they need either Hodge or Kobe to be good, but they've got other guys who – Dre Golston is not getting 18 every night, but he can get 18, right? Noah Carter is not scoring 13 in the second half every night, but he can do it. Trey Gomillion is the current guy that everybody says can't be on the floor and all that, because we got to have one of those guys, right? But there's going to be a night where he's going to play a big role and win. Sean East, had 7 assists against Vandy. Like you said, led him in scoring at Arkansas. Like, they have enough guys that different guys can do it on different nights.
That's what you want to be in that position. You don't want to have to be in the position where you're, for lack of a better person to equate this to, where you're relying on LeBron James to score 40 points a night to have a chance to win a game, right? Like that's what the Lakers are in. A problem right now is LeBron has to play out of his mind at 38 years old to win games. Now we're not. Sorry, you almost got me on a LeBron tangent right there. Looking ahead, let's look ahead. You've got Texas A&M, you've got Florida, Wednesday, Saturday slate. We're getting into that. Finally getting into that groove of Wednesday, Saturday. Again, another week where I think I think it's very possible. I think it's very much on the table to go 2-2, and I think that probably
with
should be the
with
expectation.
only 2 games. I think it'll be tough to go 2-2. Actually.
I meant 2-0. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I thought about it. I was like, I'm trying to figure out the math.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, they get 2 wins. They win the moral victory plus the actual result. 2-2. 2-0. I don't think it's unrealistic to want this team to go 2-0 in this stretch. Because these two teams aren't exactly the creme of the crop.
But 0-2 is not off the table either.
That's true,
they are good enough that Missouri is going to have to play well in both these games. I mean, A&M, I think, was preseason top 25. They were picked somewhere around 5th or 6th in this league. And, they had a bad non-con, but they just went to Florida and won. Then they came home, and I can't remember who they beat on Saturday, but I think they beat LSU at home, maybe. I'm not sure, but they beat somebody at home.
Saturday, I think, was Kentucky against LSU. So I don't think it was them.
Yeah, I don't know. Kentucky. I don't know who they played, but they've won 2 games. And they look like they're starting to play a little better. Florida has Colin Castleton, who's a first-team All-SEC guy. They've struggled a little bit, but they have pieces. And again, SEC teams, I think if my math was right, they're 15-4 at home. Like that's, these games, I mean, Ken Pom gives Missouri less than 50% chance in each game individually. Yeah. So, it's not a foregone conclusion. Like this is not football season where you just go, well, I don't know. We have more talent than they do, so we'll probably win 80% of the time. That's not the case in basketball. There are outliers in basketball all the time.
And I don't even know if we're necessarily going to be more talented than most of the teams that we play in the SEC. I think we're going to be one of the teams that has the most chemistry. I really do. I think our guys like each other. I think they play really well together. I think they see the ball see the court really well. That's one thing I always say about Trey Gomillion is he just sees the floor really well. I think that's going to help us win these games, not necessarily the talent, even though obviously Kobe and Demoy are very talented. A lot of the players are very talented. They're Division I basketball players, but.
So I've got 2 questions for you guys that kind of, to me, put the basketball in perspective. First of all, if I had told you 2 months ago that Missouri will be ranked in the top 20 at any point this season, would you have thought yes, or would you have thought no?
No. I would have thought we would have been like, I would have thought we would have had like 8 wins at this point.
Yeah, I would have said probably no. The second part of this is, as we sit today, 13-2, 20th in the country. What is your expectation level for this team? Like, you're looking at this team going, because mine, like, to frame it, I'm still looking at this team as what do they need to do to get into the tournament? And I know some people have already moved on to, no, we're talking about seeding. What do we need to do to be a 4 seed or whatever? I'm still looking at it as, hey, go 1-1 this week, go 1-1 next week when Alabama and Arkansas come to Columbia. And if you do that, then I'll move on to start talking about seeding. But like anything from 4-0 to 0-4 is on the table for this team for the next 2 weeks, in my opinion. And so I think we've got to get through that before I'm ready to have any conversation other than getting in.
Right. I think I'm there too. I think I'm at the same spot of, I didn't really expect Missouri to number one, for your first question, I don't think you expect them to be ranked. And that also plays into, I don't think I expected them to make the tournament this year. I believe I called them the best mid-major team in the SEC when we started this. And which, listen, that wasn't wrong at that point. There's a bunch of mid-major guys on this Missouri team that show that they can play at this level, and now they're getting into the SEC play. So I think that it's not. I'm just nervous about the expectations here because you shouldn't make them so high that we're not a 5 seed. Well, this season was a success. Was not a success. No, you shouldn't think about it that way. As a first-year head coach with a bunch of guys that he brought from mid-major schools and community colleges and had 3 returners on this team, and he's now made them an AP-ranked squad. So that should be something that's definitely taken into consideration when thinking about this team moving forward. So, Gabe, to your point, I think making the tournament as in a whole is a successful season. I think that that's what it should be for everyone. I think that making the tournament would be huge for the program.
I think my expectations right now are sitting around like 20 wins, I would say. And I think 20 wins is enough to get us into the tournament. Mainly because the wins are pretty good wins. I mean, we whooped a couple of ranked opponents, and obviously they're not ranked now, but that's what happens typically when you lose. I don't know. I say around 20 wins. I think we'll be in. I would like us to get around 22 wins.
Yeah. I said last week that I thought this was a 22 or 23 win team now because, like, just to put it in perspective, if they enter Selection Sunday with 20 wins, that means they've gone 7-10 the rest of the way. You know, and so they're closer to it than you think, but again, I think you just got to get through these next 2 weeks before I start. If they go 3-1 over the next 2 or something, then I'll start saying, yeah, like this top 4 team in the SEC, and let's see how high you can go. I'm just not quite ready to go there yet. I mean, you can reach a point in this season where ending up as a 9 seed is disappointing, right? I mean, that happened to Missouri 2 years ago. They were 10th in the country, and then you were a 9 seed, and it was your first tournament in 3 years and all this, but everybody kind of went in going, I don't feel very good about this. So, hey, if they get to 20-3 and then they end up a 9 seed, yeah, you can be disappointed with that. I'm just not to the point where I would call that disappointing yet.
Yeah. Totally agree. It's very interesting.
Also,
both these games on the road. Go ahead.
Also, you're good enough now that your coach is going to be hired at Texas, so that's awesome too.
Gabe?
He's not going to be hired.
Did not even think about
he's
that.
He's not going to be hired at Texas.
They can take Tang if they want.
You know why he's not going to be hired at Texas? Because there's zero chance that Texas is going to pay Missouri $13.9 million to hire Dennis Gates.
Yeah.
Before they even pay him a salary. It's not going to happen.
Witten family men's fed basketball coach Dennis.
Maybe how much of that $13.9 million would have to just go to the Witten family? That's
almost all
investigation.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Witten family right now for getting us a good coach in here.
We do not have to give them a shout out. They get shout outs at every Missouri press conference multiple times. They are the most well-known family in Missouri.
Well, if they're listening and they want to send us some money.
This can be the Witten family Missouri podcast. It can be. We can make those arrangements if we have to.
Or honestly, any family. Like, we're good to go with the Jones family, the Johnson family, whatever. If you are a family that wants your own podcast, we will rename this and have people do new graphics like tonight.
We'll get you in touch with some people.
Tucker will be on that.
I'll get you in touch. No, but I do think that that's an interesting conversation to have about this basketball team. I don't think I would have anticipated them to be as competitive. I don't know if competitive is the right word because I expected the environment to be a little bit different, right? But they have 3 consecutive sellouts now. The Alabama game sold out.
It'll be 4 by the end of Alabama. Yeah.
Okay, it'll be 4 by the end of Alabama. I don't know if you would have told me that at the beginning of the year, I've been like, okay, that's not what I expected at all. So to put the season in perspective, I do think is a good thing. A&M, what we were talking about who they played last week. They played Florida on Wednesday. They beat them 66-63. Close game. And then they played LSU on Saturday. They beat LSU 69-56. For A&M, they've got Missouri and South Carolina on the schedule here. And looking at Florida, they played Georgia on Saturday. And they beat Georgia 82-75
in the Mike White revenge game. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, Kentucky might stink. Like they might be really bad. And that might weigh down that win. Because
also Alabama might be really good.
No, I do think Alabama's really good.
That's who they played, Alabama.
I do think that Alabama is good, but just still looking at that score, I don't think it should have been that wide of a margin. So that could weigh down Missouri's potentially good win. So something to keep an eye on.
Illinois went and beat Wisconsin though.
Yes.
UCF has won some games.
And look at this. Illinois beat Texas. And K-State just came out and beat Texas, and all of a sudden, K-State's the number 11 team in the country. So I mean,
well, K-State hung 113 on Texas, and also won.
But they also gave up 102. So
yeah, they're good. Though.
Yeah, no, I think they're good. I think they're good as well. I just don't think Texas might not be as good.
I mean, there's a world where you're discussing Jerome Tang and Dennis Gates as maybe the two leading candidates for Coach of the Year at this point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's not a K-State podcast, but I am interested to see how K-State KU goes. And it's coming up in a few games, I believe.
I think KU's good. I don't want to say that. I think that they got gypped in the poll this week. I think they should have been number 1 and it should not have been Houston. But I think that's not really an incredibly hot take, but I think that we're going to see that K-State game and it's going to be like, oh no, like KU's like above.
Well, and we saw that up close and like this is not a praise KU podcast. I promise I'm going to relate this back to how it impacts Missouri. But so KU won a game where the opposition wanted to get out and run and have it be wild, right? 95, whatever it was at Mizzou. But then I watched the second half of KU Oklahoma State when they were down 45-30 at halftime. I turned that on. And the first 7 minutes of that, I thought, I don't think Oklahoma State's going to get a shot off. Like this defense is ridiculous. So my point is to be an elite team, you have to show you can win different ways. So what I want to see out of Missouri at some point, if you get in a knockdown, drag out fight in College Station, can you win a 66-64 game? They did that against UCF, but that's still a little bit different to me, right? Can you go win an SEC game that you don't score 70 in? That's what we haven't seen out of this team yet. Yeah. And that's the difference between being pretty good and being, oh, hang on, let's really pay attention good.
Yeah. 2 big wins for Kansas State too. You talk about at Texas, they also went to Baylor and beat Baylor. Baylor's not the national championship team they were a couple years ago. Still a very respectable program. What Scott Drew has going on down there. But yeah, college basketball ramping up. We're starting to get right into the swing of the conference schedule, the best time of the college basketball season. As I mentioned, both of these games on the road for the Missouri Tigers at A&M, at Florida. Home court advantage plays. It's the biggest thing that plays in any sport, I think, anywhere.
If you need any confirmation of that, just look at the free throws against Vanderbilt.
Yes.
And by the way, the game-changing play in that game
was goaltending.
100% goaltending on Dre
Yeah.
Golson. Like, I asked him afterwards, I said, are you willing to tell us if you blocked that before it went off the backboard? And Gates said, whistle said it was a clean block.
Yep.
So everybody knew.
It's the best answer. The best answer you can give.
But my point is when they're playing a road game and you're picking out a call with 7 minutes left in the first half that changed the game. And I'm not saying the officiating on the road is always good. I mean, I don't think the officiating lost the Arkansas game, but I understand why people had some problems. But remember the Vandy game on Wednesday night in College Station when you're convinced the refs always hate Missouri. Just think about Saturday.
It's true. This is the sport that it matters the absolute most is college basketball. It might matter a little bit in college football. Doesn't matter in the NFL. Stats show it does not matter at all. It matters in college basketball.
And it's why they can't ever play like postseason games on a home court.
Right. Yes.
Because if you have an NCAA tournament game that's coming up to a ref getting caught up in the home crowd, it just wrecks everything.
So keep buying your tickets. Keep selling out Mizzou Arena.
It matters.
It matters.
It really does. It really does. Let's talk about something else that matters. Let's talk about having an offensive coordinator for the Missouri Tigers football team. Look at that. Look at that transition. That was kind of, you think I get paid to do this?
Very smooth.
I'm interested by this hire. I'm not coming out here. I'm not saying this is a home run hire. This is the best thing that Missouri football could have done. I think it's good. I think it's good. I don't think that there's anything bad with it. I don't think Missouri football got worse by hiring Kirby Moore, if that makes sense. But I do think it's very interesting to look at it from this way. Drinkwitz seemed to be very relieved that he has somebody to kind of take those duties off of him. Kirby Moore had there's some really good numbers. I believe Gerard Hamilton wrote that story that has the numbers from his offensive season in there with the in the Mountain West with Fresno State, who was a conference champion, by the way. They led that conference in all offensive categories, essentially. So they had a good offense. No shocking that he does get a step up to the next level. If you're thinking, hey, Moore, that last name sounds a little bit familiar. Yeah, he's his brother. He's Kellen Moore's brother. So there is some history there. Maybe they get to compare notes a little bit, share notes, get some Kellen Moore offense into some influence into this offense. Which Gabe, I'm curious to your first reactions to the hire and everything like that.
Well, I think the big thing really is whoever he hires to do it, cool. I mean, I'm not qualified to say whether Kirby Moore is better than the guy at Western Michigan or Penn State or anywhere else. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to how much talent you have and all that. But I think the big question is, I think a lot of people think now, oh, well, offensive coordinator, cool. Drinkwitz is just out on the offense. He's just the CEO, and Kirby Moore has carte blanche with the offense. I mean, he's still going to be in the game planning. He's still going to be working with the offense more than the defense or the special teams probably at practices. He's still, the way Gary Pinkel always described it was, hey, I'm on the headset. Every play call goes through me. It's my, I decide if we go on 4th down. And if they call down a play on 4th and 3 that I don't like, I've got the ability to say no because I'm the head coach. Right. And so that's still, and last year was not a dictatorship. Last year wasn't Eli Drinkwitz saying, this is what we're doing. Shut up. Don't talk to me. I mean, there's a reason you have 872 coaches, right? That's how it works. So I'll be interested to see how much changes. How much of this is Kirby Moore coming in and saying, bringing new stuff, and how much is just, okay, this is what you guys have already done. I've got a little bit different name for it. I want to add this twist. I don't think it's going to, I don't think random Missouri fan that doesn't know they just hired Kirby Moore will watch the offense next year and go, oh, well, this is way different. I just don't think that. It's still going to come down to identifying what your guys do best and then having them manage to block, throw, and catch well enough to execute that.
I think a big thing will be recruiting. It's still going to be, this gives Drink a little bit more time to focus on recruiting, since now recruiting is a year-round thing. It doesn't stop ever. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what Kirby can do with, these guys coming in, specifically Sam Horn, because he is going to be in charge of quarterbacks, which I think is a pretty common thing for offensive coordinators anyways. But it'll be very interesting to see. He's not an old coach. He's young, maybe fresh ideas. I don't know. I'm excited about it. We've been talking about it everywhere for 6 months. Yeah. I think probably since the first game of the season against Louisiana Tech, we were like, I don't know, we might need to get an offensive coordinator in here. So I'm excited just to kind of see what he brings to the table.
Well, and the interesting part of it to me is what it does as far as, look, if your offense is bad again next year, I don't know, you tried every solution and none of it's worked, you know? So, so does this shorten the leash on Drinkwitz? Does it lengthen it? I'll be interested to see if we're through 6 games next year, Missouri's, 3-3, and the offense is 12th in the SEC. Is the heat going to be on Drinkwitz, or is it going to be, well, Kirby Moore's an idiot, because the offensive coordinator is always the least popular guy on every single, every single team at every level of high school football. We'll just call the touchdown play. Why don't we call the touchdown play more? We'd be way better. So I'll be interested to see, and hopefully we don't find out. Hopefully they're real good on offense and everything's great. I just will be interested to see the reaction if it gets off to a little bit of a bumpy start and where that kind of frustration goes.
Yeah, that is interesting. I pulled up the story that Gerard wrote for on Power Mizzou. You can go at powermizzou.com, go check that out. Last season, the Bulldogs finished 53rd in total offense at 402.8 total yards per game, 52nd in scoring offense, 30.6 points per game, 27th in passing offense at 270.6 points per game. All better than what Missouri's offense was this last season.
But they played Mountain West teams.
Yes.
And also, like last year was Kirby Moore's first year as an OC. So kind of like we've said about Drinkwitz for the last 2 years here, he's just taking what's there and doing the best he can with it. And he's going to do the same thing here, right? Like this is not, he may not have the ideal quarterback for his system on this roster or the ideal running back or whatever. But the best coaches are the guys who come in and say, okay, this is what our guys do well. And we're going to go with that. Like my system is whatever works for the guys we have, not I'm going to make them do my things because that never goes well.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see, as you've mentioned. I think what's really interesting, what Drinkwitz said that he felt like they did a really good job of improving defense on last year, which true. I can attest to that. I will say that. I would say agree to that. And he says he feels like he needs to go back and evaluate some offensive things. Also true, and I can agree with that. So very, I think this is a good move. And Gabe, kind of to your point too. The person not necessarily didn't. I don't want to say matter. I think the person matters, but it wasn't as huge of a thing that necessarily I was worried about, or I don't think a lot of Missouri fans were really worried about who it was, as long as there was somebody doing it, as long as there was somebody in that role.
I mean, I know Maggie has strong feelings on whether Kirby Moore is an excellent offensive coordinator or not. So, the hot takes.
I know. I mean, kind of like you said on Power Mizzou as well, which we're just giving shout outs to Power Mizzou left and right today.
I love it.
But I mean, I didn't know who Kirby Moore was. I obviously know who Kellen Moore is. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, if you watched football in the early 2010s, you know who he was. But I didn't know who he was. I saw it was Fresno. I looked up some info. I was like, hey, I'm not that mad about it. Talked to a guy, a Twitter account, a Fresno State Twitter account. He says they loved him. And he's bummed they left. So I'm like, that's good for us, I'm hoping, but nobody knows anything. I don't know anything. Y'all don't know anything. We just have to hope for the best, honestly.
I mean, we can all agree, though, that I'm just frustrated at the impatience not to wait till Monday. I mean, it could be Mizzou OC Cliff Kingsbury.
Which
clearly he would have taken that job, right?
I would have not been upset about.
For reasons completely unrelated.
Yes, unrelated.
As
my Twitter, some of my Twitter girlfriends know.
Most attractive OC in the SEC.
Listen, maybe that's why Drinkwitz.
I don't know if I can say that. I can say he's more attractive than Bobby.
I can say it. I can say it. Most.
I don't know who the other ones are.
Oh yeah, Fresno. That's fair. Me neither.
looking at Fresno State, they've got some dudes on that team. Like they had some pretty good players. They got three.
They had a good quarterback.
They did. And they've got three that are going to the East-West Shrine Bowl, which will be in a couple weeks. A couple wide receivers, a running back, Jordan Mims, Jalen Cropper, and Nico Ramigo. That's a fun name to say.
Can he grad transfer to Mizzou? This is actually how I decide who I want Mizzou to sign. I'm like, oh, guys with that. Like, they offered a linebacker named Kavion Thunderbird earlier this year. I'm like, I'm going to be furious if he does not.
If we don't get him.
Because it could have been Kavion Thunderbird lining up next to Brayshawn Littlejohn, and that's phenomenal.
Love it.
It'd be great. It'd be great.
Love a good name.
Out there.
And then there are kids with names that I'm like, no, I refuse to type that name for 4 years. Missouri can't sign him.
Yeah. So interested to see what happens there. It was what did Drinkwitz call it on Twitter? Did he call it the daily double of getting 2 transfers? He had something like that. Yeah, I think it was the daily double. Like got 2 transfers in a defensive back from Florida who admittedly I didn't know a whole lot about. And I don't know if a whole lot of people did know about this guy. But they also got an offensive lineman Here it is. Hand up. I don't know
Let's
this dude
go.
from the MAC, right? I don't know who this dude is from the MAC, but I'm glad he's an offensive lineman, and I'm glad he's coming to Missouri because we talked about it. Gabe, you said they need probably 3, and I said 5 just because of the numbers of how many offensive linemen they need to bring in. I still stand behind the 5 number of they need to get more offensive linemen just because of the bodies and how much they had a lot of injuries on the offensive line last year.
Yeah.
Just depth is good at that position. Excited to see what he can do. Excited for the competition it brings. But adding an offensive lineman, I was excited to see that one.
Right. Like I can't say whether Marcellus Johnson is going to start next year or not.
Yes.
I have no idea. I've watched exactly 0 snaps of him playing football in his entire life, and that number will remain the same until September
Labor Day weekend.
realistically. Yeah, but sorry, I'm not doing film study of Marcellus Johnson. If there are people that want to do that, that's great. I'm not one of them.
I just look at it like he had some good offers.
Right. Yeah. Other schools wanted him, and they just need more talent on the line. Mm-hmm. And if this guy comes in and he gets beat out by Armand Mimbo or whatever, then okay, that's fine. He wasn't good enough, but hopefully it means Mimbo was a little better. My guess is because Javon Foster's coming back. I think Foster's your left tackle. I don't probably see that changing. So I think that means that Marcellus Johnson and Mimbo, ideally, one of those guys moves inside the guard and the other one can play right tackle. Now, look, maybe he shows up and he's not good enough. Every transfer, the idea of a transfer is you're good enough to start.
Right.
And now you need higher level guys. I mean, like 2 years ago, Connor Wood was good enough to start on this offensive line. Now, in the end, that probably said more about the shape Missouri's offensive line was than that Connor Wood was and I'm not trying to crap on the kid, but he wasn't an all SEC level lineman or anything. He was fine. Right. He was a replacement level lineman, and they needed that at this time. Now they need better than they had last year. And you only do that by bringing in more guys like the DB. I've seen Missouri fans have had this theory for the last couple of weeks that a couple of corners have gone elsewhere because they look and go, well, Ennis and KAD are starting next year, so I'm not going to start there. So, and could that be a factor for some of them? Sure. But guys, you need more than 2, and you have to field a team for more than next year, so you're recruiting these guys to have, why is Georgia elite? Because when their 4-star and 5-star defensive line goes out for 6 snaps, then they are replaced by 4-star and 5-star defensive linemen. So when Ennis Rakestraw or Chris Abrams-Drain goes down with an injury for a series or takes a series off, you need a guy just as good as him or close to as good as him coming in. The drop-off can't be big. Or when Ennis Rakestraw has covered 3 straight fly patterns and just needs a break to get his breath back, you need a guy coming in at that level. So it's all about stacking talent. And I don't think coaches don't look at recruiting and go, oh, well, our linebackers are good next year, so we don't need any linebackers. No, you're going to need linebackers.
Yeah. The transfer portal does open that up a little bit more than it did when you were focused solely on high school players. But we've got to focus more on getting people, more players from that offensive line. Like you said, Tucker, we're very good at recruiting the wide receiver position or something like that, but we need more bodies on the offensive line.
Looking at it, maybe this is why he called it a daily double, Drinkwitz, because they're both last names both Johnson. Not that they both happen in the same day. Trevez Johnson, Marcellus Johnson.
Are you related?
No relation. No relation. No relation.
Oh.
I don't know what they look. I don't know what they look like, but I don't. No relation.
Okay.
We'll run some tests, but I do think that this is. Listen, when you're adding bodies, it's a good thing. I assume, Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong, they'll both be here for spring ball. I assume, unless it's noted that they won't
I think transfers pretty much are.
Okay, I just assume if it's not noted, then they are. That's kind of what I assume in that way. But I think we also need to talk about another loss that got to this this Missouri defense. Very odd the way this whole thing happened. Trajan Jeffcoat said that he was going to come back for one more year. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to come back for one more year." It's not going to be at Missouri though. And he took down a tweet that he had about one more year at Missouri. Entered, I think Max Olson was reporting that from The Athletic that he is entering the transfer portal. we'll see how that goes. Another interior, or not, I shouldn't say another interior offensive lineman, but again,
I would
looking a little
expect
thin.
I would expect Missouri might play him next year.
Yeah. Well,
At
based
North
on all of
Carolina.
based on all the comments and the quote tweets, I would also go with that theory that we will probably play them.
And let's
in
get this
Columbia.
out there. Were they tampering? Maybe. Does it matter? No.
Were they
Everybody
tampering?
doing it.
Yes.
Everybody's like, this is not an everybody's cheating but us scenario. That doesn't exist in SEC football. Everybody's doing it.
He who was it? It was Mordecai was his last name, right? The SMU quarterback.
Tanner Mordecai, yeah.
Tanner Mordecai. He said he entered the transfer portal to go to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Well, everybody already knew in the bowl game that Hartman was going to Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
that wasn't information people learned afterwards.
Like when you get a divorce and 2 weeks later you have a girlfriend, you didn't just meet that girl in the last 13 days, man. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
That's what I tried to tell all my exes that.
It certainly is an interesting time in the transfer portal of college football. But
like specific to Jeff Goat, I don't think it's a huge loss as far as on-field production. He has not been great the last 2 years, but it's worth acknowledging he still was a second stringer ahead of Johnny Walker and Arden Walker, who are supposed to start next year. You're bringing in Austin Firestone from Northwestern. I think they will get another one, maybe two defensive ends from the portal. But like, he maybe wasn't great, but he still played a lot of snaps last year. So he apparently was they thought better than some of the other options.
Yeah.
I think he had 15 tackles, 1 sack, I think was what is that?
Sounds good.
15 solo tackles and 1 sack.
Sounds good.
For not being a starter.
One near brawl induced on the Kentucky sideline.
Right.
It wasn't his fault. I want to be clear, not his fault.
Yeah. It was not his fault.
I do think you talked about it, Gabe. It's just a matter of depth for me. Just guys on the field and quality guys on the field, I think, is a big thing too. When you talk about depth, you can get bodies out there. But if they're, as you mentioned with Georgia, they're putting out 4 stars for their 4 stars. I don't think that will happen at Missouri. I think Missouri has a long way to go to get to that point where you're putting 4 stars out there for 4 stars. But I don't think that because it is such a long ways away that the expectation should be, let's just get a warm body out there. You still got to play in the SEC. Still got to play some big dogs. So yeah, certainly a weird scenario, weird situation, but that kind of, I don't know if you want to say capped off the week, because that came, well, I guess it did come on Sunday, but it was a interesting capper to a somewhat roller coaster week for Missouri athletics.
And look, there will probably be more. Yeah. Like there have to be more. There's still over 85 scholarship players. Some more guys have to transfer. I know they're going to bring more guys in. This is what it is. This is college football. They're all free agents until they're not, So
absolutely.
Hey, I've got some breaking Missouri football news for you guys.
Go ahead.
Jeremy Maclin, College Football Hall of Famer.
Oh,
as we are recording this podcast.
Oh, it just happened?
Like it just came out a few minutes ago. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Congrats to J-Mac.
Former Chiefs legend as well. All kinds of ties to the Missouri and the surrounding areas.
Just warmed up number 19 for Kadarius Toney.
Yeah. I would like to see
Maclin, I mean, 2 seasons, All-American twice. Like, if you look at he had something like 2,700 all-purpose yards per year. That's ridiculous. It's almost 300 a game, when you add in return numbers and stuff. That's ridiculous.
Best time to be at college. I was at Mizzou.
Yeah.
Sorry for all of you that were not at Mizzou during those years, but they were the good ones, the glory days.
The one I always remember with him is the first play in Lincoln in 2008, or the third play or something like that. It took just, and it's why like people focus way too much on completing deep passes and stuff. Chase threw like a 7-inch pass to Maclin, and it was a 60-yard touchdown, and it was 7-0, like 51 seconds into the game. And I remember, like, the people that watched Jeremy play back then always said the reason he's so good is he doesn't have like 4.3 speed, but he is at top speed in like 2 steps. You know, he takes off and he is at full speed within 5 yards, and it makes him really impossible to defend.
Well, now I'm going to go watch some Jerry Maclin highlights. So I hope you guys all do the same. You guys go, obviously finish the podcast, get to the end. Let me complete my sentence and then go watch some Jeremy Maclin highlights. Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening all the way to the end of the podcast. A lot going on. I know this is kind of a longer episode, but had a lot going on. Had a lot that we wanted to cover and wanted to talk about with basketball in the swing of things. Mizzou football not going to be outdone in the headline department. I'll tell you that. They are doing their best to stay relevant in the headline department. So thank you guys for listening all the way to the end of this podcast. We'll be back next week talking more hoops, probably more college football, just because football is king in today's environment. We'll have a winner for a national championship. We can kind of talk about that a little bit as well. So until next time, we'll see you then.